of conscience to me means a variety or diversity of people that are all united for Tikkun Olam, for changing the world, maybe in different ways, but all in this same idea that we can make a difference, not alone, but together.
A community of conscience means that we all work together to combat prejudice and hatred, to lift up those who are underrepresented, to ensure that we fight indifference to the suffering of others.
To be a community of conscience is to think beyond yourself, to think about not what is, but what should be and what can be if we work together. If we are upstanders, standing up for those in our community, speaking up for everyone, realizing that when any of us are mistreated, when any of us rights are violated, that we are all weaker. And similarly, when we stand up for others, when we reach out a hand of friendship and acceptance to others, we ourselves are strengthened and we ourselves are blessed.
To build our future, to try to live with our compassion, sympathy, and empathy, and show love to each other.
And to recognize that without equal access to those rights and privileges, ours are hollow and they won't last for long.
Good morning. Morning. Buenos días. Bonjour. Buongiorno. I speak many languages. I can go all morning. Boker Tov. That one you know. As your master of ceremonies, I am pleased to welcome you to the Dallas Lounge of the Community of Conscience. This national initiative of AJC, the American Jewish Committee, seeks to unite and amplify voices that promote civil discourse, pluralism, and mutual respect. By attending today, each of us is making a powerful statement that how we treat each other, respond to each other, think of each other matters. Please also join us in thanking our host here at Folly Gardier for providing this beautiful space and underwriting the breakfast, and also providing this beautiful view of the city of Dallas, a beautiful morning. Also the Dallas Morning News for their in-kind contribution of the advertising that helped get the word out about this special lounge. Our program will now begin as I invite some of the faith leaders to this podium to deliver the opening invocation.
Thank you. Let us pray. Almighty God, we give you thanks for this day, the beauty of it, the sun that shines upon us all. We thank you for this room, the diversity of it, the joy of it, and the commitment of each one. We thank you for the organizers of this event, for those of religious sensibility and those simply of goodwill who want us to rise above the noisy clamor that we endure in our culture today, to listen anew to the still small voice of conscience. Draw us together now to be driven more by the better angels of our nature, so that we can be the kind of community that you have put it in us to dream of together on this day. In your holy name, amen.
Good morning. With the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, the loving, the kind, we are eternally grateful to thee. We are thankful for this day you have given to us, for its blessings, its opportunities, its challenges. May we appreciate each day that comes to us. Bless us with strength. Bless us with guidance. As we gather here this morning, bless us with friendship. Help us to learn, to share, to reflect. Dear Lord, although we are different religions, different ethnicities, different cultures, different backgrounds, bless us with unity. Dear Lord, bless us to understand that unity is not synonymous with uniformity. that we can be different and have unity. God bless us so we may be well. May no harm come to any of us. Bless us so we may have patience, empathy, courage, and understanding. With gratitude, Amen.
God, we live in a time of technological wonder. We are the children of the information age. Bits and bytes fly from our fingers with a swipe and a tap. But before we click post, before we hit send, help us to remember that we are also your children. Digital, network, wireless wonders need upgrades when compared to the gifts of communication you created. Thank you, God, for 42 muscles of the face that smile and furrow, statements without words. Blessed are sinews and fascia, vessels and tendons. Thank you, God, for 27 bones of the hand, dozens of words with one simple gesture. Blessed are phalanges and carpals, joints and knuckles. Thank you, God, for the brain, 3 pounds of matter containing every word we'll ever utter. Blessed are neurons with their dendrites and axons, and blessed are synapses. Please, God, help me to use my face, my hands, my brain, my heart to communicate in holy ways. May every part of me contribute to a community of conscience.
Good morning. It is an incredible honor to be here with you at today's Community of Conscience breakfast. Today, Monday, November the 25th, is the same day in 1963 that the 35th President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was laid to rest in Arlington Cemetery. It is thus fitting to be here now to reflect upon the magnitude of those events that took place here in Dallas on Friday, November the 22nd, 56 years ago, and how those events tragically placed the city on the world stage. The effects of the city in the aftermath, however, pulled Dallas civic and faith-based leaders across denominations together with resolve and to work steadily to rebuild the image of the city, however so stigmatized at the time for being one of intolerance. Dallas has achieved so much, moving the city upward and onward over the decades, but most especially for recognizing the significance of officially commemorating the 50th anniversary in Dallas in 2013. This was a landmark anniversary that was approached with dread and from which Dallas could not escape the media spotlight. The series of commemorative events which took place over an entire year culminated in a special event in Dealey Plaza on the anniversary and garnered positive international news. That year, there were countless media stories, documentaries, feature films, books, and all sorts of wonderful local community collaborations. Not only was this a form of catharsis for the city, many of the institutional partnerships that were forged across Dallas and North Texas during this time strengthened the community and the city of Dallas, especially with regard to arts and cultural collaboration. Unwinding backwards, what happened in Dallas in 1963 also rocked the state of Texas, the nation, and the world. And so, thus, Dallas cannot ever be completely detached from this history, however much it is wanted to. The presidential motorcade starts on a short ride through downtown Dallas. The streets were lined with jubilant crowds, estimated at over 200,000. What had started as a rainy day, the sun was now shining. Spirits on the streets were high, with a very diverse assortment of excited spectators, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the President and the First Lady. The procession was headed to the Trade Mart luncheon, where the President was to deliver a speech to a nonpartisan gathering of over 1,000 Dallas citizens, clergy, civic, and business leaders who had all come together to demonstrate unity and to help mitigate the brewing rumors that Dallas was home to extremist groups that included former General Walker and other right-wing, anti-Catholic and anti-Kennedy factions. The mob scene that had surrounded U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Adlai Stevenson, during his visit to Dallas in October 1963, where he was spat upon and hit on the head with a placard, fueled mounting concerns that perhaps the president should not come to Dallas, and in which Stanley Marcus had encouraged the president also not to come. Preparations moved forward in anticipation of the presidential arrival. As the news ricocheted through radio and television broadcasts that the president had been shot, then pronounced dead at Parkland Hospital, the stunned city was plunged into grief. Within a mere 3 hours of President Kennedy's landing in Dallas, which was the next to last leg of his Texas whirlwind campaign trip, the unimaginable had happened. In a period of national crisis, Vice President Lyndon Baines Johnson solemnly assumes command, takes the presidential oath of office on Air Force One at Love Field, and returns to Washington, D.C. 2 days later, on Sunday, November the 24th, while state funeral arrangements are underway for President Kennedy, the suspected presidential assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, was murdered on live national television inside the Dallas Police Headquarters by nightclub owner Jack Ruby. And this only sent more shockwaves around the world and fueled more conjecture about what kind of city Dallas was. How could this have happened? What was going on? Who was involved and why? Was Dallas behind it? Immediate conspiracies started to spew forth. And then Dallas and the Dealey Plaza became a memorial site and gathering place. The citizens of Dallas, for years afterwards, wherever they traveled, had to endure insults and ridicule, and prompted many to lie about where they had come from. It has taken decades to dispel this negative image of Dallas for being the city that killed the president. Mayor Eric Johnson's goal for Dallas, new objectives to lead the city forward, helped the transition, and later the wild success of the Dallas Cowboys and then the popular soap opera Dallas gradually lifted the blame and stigma of the assassination. But even so, in the late 70s and early 80s, there was inevitable local resistance to the notion of a historical exhibit inside the former Texas School Book Depository building to create on the 6th floor. Dallas County is to be credited for having saved the building and renovated it for its administrative functions, but left the 6th floor empty. Just as a gauge as to how long it takes a community to recover and heal, the citizens of Dallas raised funds for the Kennedy Memorial designed by the architect Philip Johnson, and was finally dedicated in 1970. The 50th anniversary of its dedication will be commemorated next year in June. The 6th floor exhibit opened the exhibit John F. Kennedy and the Memory of a Nation on President's Day, February 1989, almost 31 years ago. It was deliberately not called a museum, as that conveyed a notion of permanence. This exhibit was designed as a temporary exhibit expressly for an audience that had lived through the assassination. People were still seeking answers and seeking some form of reconciliation. It had taken years for a small team of bold, unrelenting, and a courageous community volunteers to pave for the way for this exhibit to be developed, with very little contributed support. In 1993, Dealey Plaza and the former Texas School Book Depository building, along with surrounding buildings, were designated as part of a National Historic Landmark District. Even with this additional recognition, no one who was involved in this highly controversial project imagined that the exhibit on the 6th floor would evolve into an accredited museum which now holds over 90,000 artifacts, films, photographs, oral histories, and has become a major research center for researchers, filmmakers, authors, educators, and students. Some of the early founders of the 6th floor imagined that the need to tell the story of the events that happened here in Dallas would eventually go away with the passage of time. This has not happened, and yet while the interests have changed, they have not diminished, as new generations who are not alive at the time and who did not live through these traumatic events have come to make their own meaning. While Dallas has worked very hard to shed the stigma of being the city of hate, The annual media replay of stories related to the assassination continues to haunt and irk. Many people just want to forget, and this is understandable, but there are also new generations looking for context and meaning, and do not share the same memory or trauma by not having lived through these events. There is conflict in recognizing the need to remember and the desire to erase, forget, or rewrite the past, which can deprive future generations from learning critical lessons about their own history, community, and identity. And this is our role to help provide. Both Dealey Plaza and the Sixth Floor Museum serve as important sites of conscience and memory, as does the new Holocaust Museum. This sacred ground is being preserved to help provide context about a tragic event that shattered the city and the nation. And there are many for whom satisfactory answers can never, ever be provided. This is a highly polarizing subject, which is still deeply contested, inflaming very strong opinions. Our role is to help present the facts and strive to provide a safe and respectful place for all visitors of any age to learn about facts, to respectfully learn about opposing points of view through different lenses and voices, and to help visitors to Dallas make a meaningful connection between the past and related contemporary issues of today, and to think about their role in shaping the future. And so, in conclusion, there is a natural alliance and affinity on all our work as organizations, following what Kennedy pronounced on in a Thanksgiving proclamation. Let us renew that spirit by expressing our acceptance of the limitations of human striving, and by affirming our duty to strive nonetheless, as Providence may direct us toward a better world for all mankind. So in closing, thank you so much for allowing me to speak, and now, Mary Pat.
Good morning. I'm Mary Pat Higgins. I'm the president and CEO of the new Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum, and it is such an honor to be a part of AJC's Community of Conscience launch. The mission of the museum is to teach the history of the Holocaust and advance human rights to combat prejudice, hatred, and indifference. We believe our mission has never been more relevant. When our survivors came to Dallas in the 1950s to reclaim their lives, they were surprised and dismayed by the segregation that was the norm in those days. In his autobiography, our founder, Mike Jacobs, wrote about his first experience on a city bus in 1951. He walked to the back of the bus and took a seat. The bus driver stopped the bus and started yelling at him. A fellow passenger who spoke Yiddish explained to Mike that the back of the bus was for Black people and that he had to move to the front of the bus reserved for white passengers. Mike refused to move. When the fellow passenger pleaded with him not to make any trouble, Mike got off the bus and walked. He had a similar experience when he drank out of a colored water fountain at the county courthouse. When someone grabbed him by the hair and told him not to drink from that water fountain, Mike said, "What's the difference between this water and the other water?" Our survivors understood the devastating consequences of unchecked prejudice and hatred, and they were determined to share their personal history to teach our community about the dangers of bigotry and indifference to the suffering of others. In 1977, a small group of Holocaust survivors came together with an extraordinary vision to teach the North Texas community the lessons learned from the Holocaust. These amazing survivors saw as their legacy the creation of a museum for future generations of students and adults. All of us involved with the museum are so proud to have played a role in realizing this dream some 40 years in the making by opening the new Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum on September 18th, just 2 short months ago. In our new museum, we teach students and all our visitors about the paradigm of genocide, the Holocaust. the development of modern human rights in the wake of the Holocaust, and the 10 stages of genocide, so we can understand the process of genocide and be attuned to its warning signs. Then we pivot to America. In this wing, our visitors explore the evolution of human and civil rights through an American lens, learning and being inspired by our foundational ideals, being confronted by the reality of American life since our founding, that those ideals did not apply to all citizens, and learning to take part in the repair process to bring our reality into accord with those incredible ideals. In this wing, we celebrate upstanders who have participated in the process of repair. These upstanders include many brave men and women who stood up to change Dallas for the better. For example, in May of 1964, Clarence Broadnax, the first African-American hairdresser at the downtown Neiman Marcus, walked across the street to have lunch at the Piccadilly cafeteria and was denied service. He and Juanita Craft, the first African-American woman to vote in Dallas, led a protest outside the cafeteria for 28 days until the cafeteria changed its policy and desegregated, just a month before the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The act, which ended segregation and advanced civil rights for all, was first proposed by President Kennedy and then championed by civil rights leader Martin Luther King and Lyndon Baines Johnson. It ended legal segregation, but there was so much work left to do. Segregation within DISD continued until the Fifth Circuit Court upheld Judge Barefoot Sanders' order for DISD to adopt a desegregation plan in 1983. In 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, and in 1969, George L. Allen was elected as the first African-American city council member. He went on to play an important role in the desegregation of DISD. Also, in 1969, Anita Martinez was elected as the first Hispanic city council member. Ms. Martinez later founded the Anita M. Martinez Ballet Folklorico to help Hispanic youth connect with their culture and heritage. In 1967, Adeline Harrison became acting mayor of Dallas until a new mayor was elected. She was not only the first female mayor, she was the first Jewish mayor, paving the way for Annette Strauss, also Jewish, to be the first elected female mayor in 1987. Not long afterwards, Ron Kirk became the first African-American mayor in 1995. Dallas has yet to have an Asian American city council member, but in nearby Addison, Joe Chow was elected to city council in 2002, and he went on to become mayor in 2005. He is currently serving in that role, his fifth term in that role. In 1979, Dallas partners Bill Nelson and Terry Tobito were activists who urged the Dallas Gay Political Caucus to participate in the National March in Washington for gay and lesbian rights. The caucus was a precursor to the Dallas Gay Alliance, which helped Micah England file suit against the state, city, and DPD chief after her application to join the Dallas Police Department in 1989 was denied because she was a lesbian. The Dallas Gay Alliance went on to become the Resource Center, which provides incredible resources to the LGBT community today. I could give so many more examples of individuals and institutions that have played important roles in the process of repair in our community, who we highlight in our museum. I could also give current examples of how the reality for many in our community does not live up to these incredible ideals. The struggle for equal rights continues, but by teaching acceptance and respect and our individual responsibility to stand up for what is right, we can change lives and have profound effects in our community for generations to come. Albert Einstein reminds us, the world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. Together, we must act to help our community understand the dangers of prejudice and bigotry and think about their ethical responsibility to stand up to prejudice and hatred, to be upstanders. The museum is proud to play a role in this work and honored to work among many of the incredible institutions and leaders represented here today. I'm confident that together we can build a community of conscience and a community of upstanders. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I appreciate the invitation, Joel, but respectfully, I feel kind of guilty that I'm taking the place of somebody who would be far more interesting. You see, I'm Jewish and I married a Catholic. We have enough guilt in our house to power a small city. I'm Ken Hirsch, the CEO of the George W. Bush Presidential Center here in town, and I have the honor of working on some of the priorities established by President and Mrs. Bush while they were in the office and taking on new work inspired by their values of economic and political freedom, less government dependency, and being a strong and compassionate country here and abroad. That's why the work of the AJC and the Bush Center around freedom, democracy, and tolerance joins so many in this room to make sure that we showcase the best of what America has. We should recognize that democracy and freedom are not the default conditions throughout human history. Perhaps that's why we refer and consistently refer to our democracy as the American experiment. 250 years old and we're still an experiment. The Chinese view the state-centric regime as superior, and they're taking great joy that we're turning on ourselves. I see us now in the midst of a very important global struggle that will be studied some 100 years from now. The question I have is whether this study will be done in the sociology department or the anthropology department. Sociologists who study group dynamics and anthropologists who study human traits and evolution. Democracy at its heart is a sociological experiment. We have decided to self-govern. We've established processes for a peaceful transition to power. We sacrifice some personal liberties in order to guarantee respect for minority rights. Our founders were so suspicious of our human nature, they said men are not angels, that they established a series of checks and balances to ensure that whatever we do it inefficiently, carefully, slowly, frustratingly, and a constant tug of war. They were even suspicious of that checks and balance system that they overlaid a system of the fourth estate, or free press, to be a watchdog on the whole damn thing. And then finally, they separated church and state to ensure that no undue influences would creep in. In short, it is a complicated sociology experiment in group dynamics designed to allow us to peacefully coexist by each deciding that we're going to give up something for the benefit of the whole. And we have learned in the process that as Americans, it is possible to defend and support free speech, peaceful and civil assembly, which I do, but as individuals to stand firmly at the same time against bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, and intolerance, even if those values are being shouted from the public square. Our democracy may be raucous, but it is not evil. Over time, though, absent group order, as studied by the sociologists, humans have reverted to tribalism, more appropriate for the anthropology department. Examples are everywhere. When law and order has broken down or are non-existent, humans become tribal, and our track record is not good. There's tribal warfare all over the world, in Africa, the Middle East, China, the former Soviet Union, fighting based on ethnic or religious differences that has wreaked havoc, even while other parts of the world are experiencing such incredible advancement. These divisions run deep and take a really, really strong cultural and rule of law and order to preserve that tolerance and hold the society together. If it is kept under wraps by a very strong leader or a strong man or a strong woman, that's not stable either, because when that force is gone, then conflict starts. The goal is to find a system that is sustainable over long periods of time. We think about the fact that in developed economies, this isn't supposed to happen, but that track record's not good either. Think about a perfect lab The former what was known as Yugoslavia is a great little laboratory of experiment. For almost 50 years, this was a country. And it was a country unified by a strong man under an ideology. Granted, that ideology didn't hold up, but it was under an ideology. But when it broke apart, when the wall came down and Yugoslavia broke apart, those countries separated exactly along ethnic and tribal lines. Even in democracies like we saw before World War II, when the democracies proved fragile, when serious hardship was being experienced, when it was apparent that the public servants got it wrong, this gave rise to populism, which brought with it the blame game, intolerance, nativism, protectionism, and isolationism. We're experiencing this again today, where the rule of law is being undermined by popularly elected leaders. Maduro, Putin, Erdogan, Duda, Orban, they got elected, and then worked to undermine the various institutions that brought them to power. And there are places that where tribalism is rising, and the nationalist parties in the EU are a perfect example. There's also growing acceptance of scapegoating, which can target any minority, be they Jewish, Muslim, or black. And we're seeing signs in the United States today, something that has been brewing for quite some time and has again reared its ugly head. It's too easy to blame a single person at the top for fanning the flame. While I am dismayed by poor leadership on this issue from the top, I am more interested as to why those embers of hate exist in the first place. Feelings that these voices have impunity doesn't explain the existence of those white supremacists, an intolerant humanity that is finding a platform today. We should not need to rely on a single person at the top to keep a lid on things. Something else is going on. If during a period of economic prosperity, relative full employment, and relative peacetime, we see the rise of intolerance, anti-Semitic, xenophobic, and racist behavior in this country, something else is going on. I'm beginning to wonder if the anthropologists are winning. Was de Tocqueville wrong? Is our sociology experiment too weak to overcome innate human traits of hatred and division? People have begun to sort themselves geographically in this country, both physically and online, which is a very dangerous phenomenon. The lawless online world is also a very interesting microcosm where humanity can show what it's like in a true state of nature. It's a perfect laboratory of division. And that's what we could look like if the rule of law is put aside. The result will be less tolerance, less empathy, less civility, and in the end, potentially less order. That's why the work that we do here is so important. It's also why the work of the other institutions represented in this room are critical. I want to congratulate Mary Pat and the Holocaust Museum for widening the aperture around not just the Holocaust, but human rights in general, because these are topics that need a voice. But I am optimistic. I'm optimistic that there are too many great people in the silent, massive majority that are not evil or full of hatred. But we're in a period where outrage gets the positive reinforcement. We need to recommit to breaking that cycle by not rewarding the ugly behavior. My call to action is relatively simple: courage. Every one of us needs courage. We need courage to renew our relationships, ask what we can do for each other. That's what de Tocqueville saw as most special in this country. We need to have the courage to be kind, especially to those you disagree with. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to agree to disagree. But you don't need to condemn the value or the worth of the other person. The AJC and the Bush Center work on issues around tolerance and democracy to reinforce these messages. President George W. Bush and Ellen DeGeneres got seated at a football game a few weeks ago and demonstrated that if they pass a phone to each other, even though they might have political differences, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's an absolute shame that Ellen DeGeneres had to defend sitting next to a former president. President George Bush and Michelle Obama, with his Altoid diplomacy at 2 funerals in the last year, showed kindness to the world. This event today has brought people together that I bet if we were in a political debate, there'd be violent disagreement. But we've all come together to focus on what is good. Tolerance starts with mutual respect, not digging in and doubling down on division. President Bush said it best right here in Dallas in July 2016 at the ceremony for the fallen police officers. He remarked, Too often, we judge other groups by their worst examples while judging ourselves by our best intentions. And this has strained our bonds of understanding and common purpose. But Americans, I think, have a great advantage. To renew our unity, we only need to remember our values. We need to have courage to help each other. There is no better feeling in the world. The recent Dallas tornadoes saw neighbors helping each other. We didn't sort chainsaws based upon political differences. Let's not wait for a crisis to remind us that we're all Americans in this sociology exhibit together. And our leaders must have the courage to cast a principled vote. We are the world's beacon for freedom and democracy, and we must prevail to give the sociologists of the future the data they need to study why human exceptionalism flourished in our time. Let's leave anthropologists to study Neanderthal creatures and instead work to reinforce the magic that happens when democratic and tolerant societies flourish. Human beings are safe to achieve, to create, to enjoy, and to live. Thank you.
Thank you to all the speakers. At this time, I'd like to invite our diverse leaders representing the community of conscience to share a statement of principles.
At this time of division and rancor, AJC joins hands with fellow Americans representing the varied fibers of the tapestry of this great country, summoning them to stand with us, draw strength and inspiration from each other, and together with us convene the community of conscience.
Join us in the spirit of the American motto, E pluribus unum, as we unite across differences, celebrate our diversity, contribute to a shared society, and resolve to advance the welfare of all.
Join us in the spirit of thanksgiving as we come together to advance the best of American ideals, and as we continually strive to establish a more perfect union.
Join us in the spirit of inclusiveness as we reach out to and uplift the poorest among us, as we welcome the stranger in our midst, and as we fully enfranchise the differently abled.
Join us in the spirit of civility as we reject anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry, incendiary partisanship, whatever its sources, dehumanizing and demonizing rhetoric, and threats of violence.
Join us in the spirit of patriotism as we strive proudly and boldly to uphold American ideals of equality, of dignity, of opportunity for all.
Join us in the spirit of democracy as we reaffirm and reinforce our constitutional system, seek equal justice for all, and safeguard our fundamental freedoms.
Join us in the spirit of love as we shun the self-anointed purveyors of hate, delegitimatization, and ostracism under the false guise of Holy Writ.
Join us in the spirit of forgiveness as we reject the notion of narrowly defining our brothers and sisters by that which divides us while writing off that which we share in common.
Join us in seeking to fulfill the biblical teaching that we are all B'Tselem, all created in the divine image, the very foundation of human equality.
Join us in pursuing the prophet Isaiah's age-old vision that one day nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore, that peace, love, and unity will reign.
And join us in the spirit of American pluralism as we promote mutual respect, not mere tolerance, as the standard for enlightened coexistence. We have heard the powerful principles upon which this occasion is purposed. These principles embody the founding principles of our nation. As I pondered the principles espoused, I was overcome with a warm and encouraging feeling. That feeling was hope. Hope. Helen Keller defined hope as seeing the invisible, feeling the intangible, and achieving the impossible. Imagine a blind person describing hope in such a manner, a blind person speaking of seeing the invisible to accomplish the impossible. Our community of conscience is today seeing what is not there, feeling what does not yet exist, and doing what cannot be done. Hope is a powerful sensation. Hope is a feeling of expectant urgency to bring about significant change of a circumstance. Hope. I preside over felony offenses, allegations of wrongdoing that, if proven, bring about significant loss of liberty in the worst cases, and in the best cases, dramatic restrictions upon a person's daily living. The ever-increasing inhumanity to mankind that I witness on a daily basis could cause the strongest among us to descend into despair and frustration. But yet, there is hope. For this community of conscience, there is hope. Bishop Desmond Tutu said, quote, "Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness." Hope. Hope is embodied and personified in this organization. This organization that has identified a crisis and envisioned a solution to move our city forward in a positive direction. According to St. Augustine, hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are. This community will couple anger, which arises from our fellow citizens being denied basic human rights. We'll couple that with courage, the courage to reach out, the courage to speak out, the courage to demand mutual respect for every member of our community. Today, we have hope. We have hope because persons from many faiths, races, and ethnicities have come together for the betterment of our community. We have hope because scores of persons, unknown, will reap the benefits of the compassion, the courage, the commitment, and the foresight of every person in this room. Every person here today has decided to walk out of the darkness of destruction, the darkness of selfishness, and we will walk into the light of creative altruism. We have hope because we will not remain silent about the things that matter. Where there is life, there is hope. Today we reject fear. Today we reject despair. Today we reject selfishness. Today we began to see the invisible. Today we began to touch the intangible. Today we began to do the impossible. Today we have hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Kemp, and to all our faith and civic leaders who have united appropriately today as we begin this week of Thanksgiving. We celebrate this uniquely American holiday by recommitting ourselves to the core American values of pluralism, civility, and mutual respect. Most of us would probably say that today's divisiveness is worse than we've seen in our lifetimes. The community of conscience will serve as a vehicle to amplify the voices of unity. If you believe that we can disagree with someone, but not question their patriotism, that diversity is a strength rather than a challenge, that tolerance, while admirable, is not sufficient, but that we must aim higher towards that goal of mutual respect, then join us. If what you've heard and experienced this morning resonates with you, I would like to invite you to take out your phone. I'll wait. Go ahead. I want you to open up a browser and go to the website that hopefully is on your screen over here, ajc.org/community. There you'll have a chance to add your voice to those who know that we can be united even as we are different, that we can live our American motto of E pluribus unum, out of many, one, that we can be an agent of positivity as together we strive towards that more perfect union. Don't be a bystander. Let's make sure that Dallas is a city of upstanders and a model for others around the country and our world, because we all have a stake in this. Before I turn it back over to our MC, Daniel Tuccio, to send us on our way, I'd like to thank him, as well as Univision, who, along with our sponsors that were acknowledged earlier, made today happen. I'd like to thank AJC Regional Board Member Stephanie Schneidler for having the vision of ensuring we had a permanent record of today's proceedings to assist us in sharing our community of conscience that we've birthed here today with others, thereby keeping us accountable to those values that we've espoused today. And finally, to Ken Glazer and Foley Gardier for their partnership in making this event possible by hosting us in this beautiful space at this morning's breakfast. Ken, in over 25 years of Jewish communal service, I don't know that I've had the pleasure of working with someone as passionate as you about making the community a better place, not just for the Jewish community, but for all. Thank you. Thank you for all you do, and thank you to the staff and partners at Foley Gardier who made today possible. Finally, thank each of you who made a choice to come together here this morning. Your presence here matters. This is not a one-shot deal. This will be an ongoing force in our community, and we invite you to continue to be engaged with it. A final note, at 11:30 this morning, AJC Director of Muslim-Jewish Relations, Ari Gordon, and Muslim-Jewish Advisory Council Co-Chair, Mohammed Al-Abiari, will lead a comparative text study on Muslim and Jewish perspectives on gratitude and responsibility. If you would like to join us for this brown bag lunch at Thanksgiving Square, although we may have some lox and bagels left over if you want to have the same meal twice, please see me or one of my AJC colleagues. There is still limited space available. Thank you. Daniel.
Thank you, everyone, for coming this morning. We really appreciate your help. Please give a round of applause to everyone here and to all our speakers this morning. There's a videographer if you haven't got a chance to say anything you like about the community of conscience. Please feel free to do it before you leave. This concludes our ceremony. Thanks so much for coming again, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
I am moved to want to be a part of this community of conscience, considering everything that's going on in the nation and in the world.
Creating a civil space in which we can communicate and not get so polarized.
Using our own faith and our own backgrounds to give us lens of how we do things is going to make us a much stronger community.
That means we're a lot of like-minded people all seeking for civility and civil accord and inclusivity in our community. Dallas of course, over the years has had its bumps on that, and the community is always pulled together.
I think it'll bring people together and make people more aware of the issues that we're having to face as a community, and be able to work together to solve problems.
We can meet each other and learn about each other and understand each other, and rather than hate each other.
It means that we think from the perspective of other communities as well, that we put ourselves in their shoes and see how they see the world, see other communities, and so we can work together and become conscious of each other's presence, cultures, faith, traditions.
Community of conscience to me means awareness. Awareness of differences, awareness of similarities, and finding within that awareness a way to know somebody, to be known by somebody, and to develop a community of peace.
We need more bridges. This is a way of building bridges. Building bridges is absolutely necessary. So I'm very interested in this.
I think it's important that people of Dallas come together, especially at times in which there are forces that are trying to tell us that we shouldn't be together or that we're not. But we have a lot of important work to accomplish in this city, and I wanted to stand with my brothers and sisters that are doing that work.
I'm an immigrant. I've been undocumented for most of my life, and I understand the frustration that comes with a system that doesn't always include us. But I realize that my liberation, my ability to stay and be part of this country or this community is through my relationships with other people, with our Jewish brothers and our Christian brothers, our Muslim brothers. And that's why I think community of conscience will make a huge difference.
It's recognizing that each individual person has value, that there's value in their humanity, that I'm not going to change you as you are, but I will respect you and accept you. And when we can come together, we will come together for common purposes. But I will respect your humanity and allow you to live and work out your faith as you see best. And I want that for me. And I think a community of conscience is just respecting persons, respecting our unique humanity.
There is a thirst in this world, in this community, that people are tired of divisiveness and partisanship. They want to come together to be with other people who recognize that I may not agree with you, we may have different opinions, you may be straight, I may be gay, you may be Jewish, I may be Muslim, we may disagree along a whole range of issues, but at the end of the day, we're human beings, we have aspirations, we have hopes, we have dreams, and that is what binds us together.